my sense of accountability towards others has become a lot bigger. When you're an
Okay.
entrepreneur, again, I can't speak for entrepreneurs, but I can only speak for myself. Your
Right.
biggest asset and actually the biggest product that you will ever build is not an app, not a website, not a tangible product. It is your team. It is your people. It is the people that
Right.
wake up every day and are making the same sacrifice that you are making to grow something that they equally believe in.
Hi, hello, namaste to all my listeners. I'm your host, Sarthak Varshney, and I welcome you all to the Balls of Steel show, where you get an insight into the business mindset of the entrepreneurs. Dhandho Ni Soch. Our today's guest is Miss Eela Dubey. Hi, Eela.
Hi, Sarthak.
How are you?
I'm fabulous. How are you?
I'm doing great. Great, I'm talking to you, and I'm so happy that I'm talking to you. So, yes, I'm very happy.
I'm happy to be speaking to you as well.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So, Ela, how's the Wednesday coming around? What's in for the day? You're a very busy person, I believe.
Yes, so I have you on my schedule today, and followed by you, I think I have calls all the way until 8 p.m. back to back, which actually for
Right,
me is not an unusual day in the life
right.
of Edufund.
Okay, okay. I guess this is how our lives are like. Even when I go sit, otherwise I'm mostly on calls. And then when I look back at my day, that what did I do? I'm like nothing. Then I'm like, oh shit, that sounds bad. But then it's so many calls that that is also such a drainer for me. That I'm like, dude, I need a break. I need some sleep. I need something, just to get that thing off my head. So I can understand, I can completely understand. So how do you feel, when you talk to so many, do so much of talking, talking, talking all day?
I feel I feel sleepy at times, which I think most entrepreneurs may feel similarly, but not tell you.
Mhm.
I feel hungry constantly because my brain is working, so I'm eating every 2 hours, or sometimes
Oh my
forgetting to
God.
eat because I'm so wrapped up in what I'm doing. But I also feel so much joy and gratitude to be doing what I'm doing and know that I'm speaking to people as a result of my company's and my team's success so far in the last year. So it's a lot of
Right.
mixed emotions, but all of it is overshadowed by a lot of positivity and happiness.
Okay. So you're a person of gratitude, huh?
Always. Yes, yes.
Oh,
That's my mantra.
that's your mantra.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll get to the mantras at the end, but yeah, we already have one guys here. Okay, so remember gratitude number
Yes.
one. Okay, so Ela, let me ask you the question. What is the business that you are into because of which we are gonna say that you've got the balls of steel?
Balls of steel. Well, I would hope that every entrepreneur, when they are asked this question, says that they are in the business of changing something or changing lives or doing something positive or disrupting. But in the case of EduFund, we are a platform, an education platform that's here to disrupt how parents prepare for their children's higher education journey in India, because this is something that is just not happening. It doesn't exist. And
Right,
so we're trying to help them re envision this
right.
entire process and change a behavioral mindset towards this
Mm-hmm.
goal in a really, really big way.
Okay, so you're already getting me interested, when they're talking about putting a dent, disrupting the industries and all that stuff. That sounds so interesting already to me. Okay, so Ira, why don't you enlighten me with your complete journey from the very beginning to the current point at which you are?
Well, I was born on no, I'm kidding. I will skip all of those fine little details. Where would you like me to start in my journey? Because it's been a pretty long road up until where I am.
I don't mind you start from the starting, like honestly.
Okay, well, I'll give you the condensed version. I won't go through every bit of my life in
Okay.
detail. I was born and brought up in the United States. I have spent most of my life moving around. I am the daughter of one immigrant who moved from India to the US and
Yeah.
another parent who was the son of immigrants, but he was born and brought up in the US. And so I
Mm-hmm.
did most of my schooling and education in the United States, with the exception of 1 year in fifth standard, where I actually went to a convent school in Lonavala. Uh,
Okay.
Talk about an incredible experience. So
Huh.
most of my upbringing and education and exposure was in the US, but I've spent a lot of time and years now coming to India, working here, seeing family, of course, like I think any
Mm-hmm.
immigrant's child would, to visit her grandparents, and getting associated and influenced by her roots, which was very important to my parents growing up, is making sure I maintain
Right.
the connection to my heritage and my culture. So I grew up this hybrid of uh, Indian influence and American culture. I always say, America is my home, but India is my country. So I
Okay.
had a mixed upbringing. I did my education, my bachelor's degree from New York University. And following that, I actually started a master's degree at Columbia, which I dropped out of. And I
Wow.
spent a few years post my education working on Wall Street, where after
Okay.
I moved to India and had a eat, pray, love moment, gave up my entire uh, I wouldn't say gave up my entire interest, but I took a very left course in my career, and I spent about 2.5 years living and working on a yoga ashram. Very different
Mm-hmm.
influence and exposure, trying to get an
Right.
understanding of what it is I really wanted to do, how I wanted to make an impact, what was the meaning behind everything I was interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest is all history. I mean, post that, Edufund came into the picture, and now I'm talking to you. So it's a very condensed
Okay.
version of my story.
Okay. I mean, see, honestly, Ela, as much as this sounds interesting to me, but we don't do condensed versions here. Okay, we do way elaborated versions. So, you can still go in detail, else I'll start pulling out all the details.
Yeah, pull them out. Pull them out. Whatever drawers you want to open, I'm an open book. So go for it.
Okay, okay, okay. So on a condensed version era, you're born and brought up in US, and all the things have been happening, and you have one immigrant parent from the India, and as if I'm just saying it right, quoting it right, and then the another parent from US saw the child and the parent. Then that's where you're born in US, and then the story goes on. Tell me more about your parents, Ela.
More about my parents. Um,
Right.
Well, my parents are pretty dynamic people, but what I've always appreciated about them the most is, irrespective of what cultures they grew up in or how
Mm-hmm.
different I sometimes felt from them, because it's really interesting, I think, to be born as a immigrant of any person living in a foreign country, where you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to adapt to a different culture, but also remember that you have strong roots elsewhere.
Hmm.
So you're hybrid. You're never like one parent or the other completely. And so
Right.
growing up in that manner, what I appreciated the most about them was they were always very supportive of whatever I chose to do with my future and however I owned my identity. And there's actually one
Okay.
thing I would like to say about my father, is that he is the reason that I'm such a strong woman. So a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people today, you'll hear a lot of the feminist overtones, I think, say, let's have really strong daughters. Let's raise them, let's know them, let's be them. And I completely agree, but I also give a lot of credit to my father, who has
Right.
only two daughters, who raised me to be an incredibly fierce woman with no
Mm-hmm.
fear, and to work across industries that have always been dominated by men, right? Where I was always
Right.
a minority in whatever I chose to do, not only because
Mm.
of the color of my skin, but also because I was a woman. And so I give a
Okay.
lot of gratitude and thanks to him for being a man and raising a really strong woman. I think that's not an easy thing to do. And I would say that a lot of my journey and a lot of my learnings across the way are purely because he enabled me
Mm.
to do these things. He taught me to be fearless. He was the one that told me to take a risk and drop out of grad school from an Ivy League when most people will look down on you and think it's a little bit
Right.
odd, right? And so
Right.
he's always been someone who's really pushed forward my journey as an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I see. And what was your parents' profession?
My mother actually is highly educated. She had a PhD in polymers chemistry, but soon after getting married and having kids, she decided not
Mm-hmm.
to work any longer. And my
Okay.
father is a medical doctor.
Oh, okay. I see. I see. And they're still working? I mean, is your father still working?
Yeah, he's still working now. He, for a decent part of my childhood, he faced a serious health issue. And so he
Right.
was sick quite a bit growing up, but he's since recovered and now he's back to work. And he's someone who
Mm.
follows the adage that I will never retire, don't ever make me stop working. And I think that's where I get my bone to work very with a lot of zeal, I would say.
Okay, okay, okay. So, Ela, tell me more about your childhood. Like, I want to know how you were like when you were a child, and since you were born and brought up in US, I want to know what were the differences, being raised in US and then, from someone being raised in India.
Raised in the US. What would what would being raised in the how would that be different? Well, I ate a lot of macaroni and cheese.
Okay,
um,
okay.
being raised in the U.S. Well, I think maybe I I don't know if it was being raised in the U.S. that was always so different, but I was raised with a lot of freedom in general. But while I was
Hmm.
in the U.S., I think I was like a lot of other American kids in the sense that my parents didn't really want to put me in private school. So I went to a public school and got the same education that many Americans do. Um, I sang in a jazz choir, actually, and a chorale.
Yeah,
So I was exposed to a lot of Western classical music. Sadly, I never got exposed to the Hindustani classics, which I now
right.
admittedly regret, but I grew up with
Uh-huh.
exposure to things like opera and Broadway musicals, and on Friday nights, going to football games, even though I think football is completely stupid. American football, going
Okay.
to football games and going to high school dances and being really excited to get my driver's license at 16 and then crashing my car. All of
Oh,
those learnings, getting taking the SATs, which I think every American child probably appalls.
right.
Getting ready for the college process. So those were all of the American, I guess, quote unquote things that are different, you know?
Hmm. Okay, okay. And if I talk about, although, uh, you know, although teachings that your parents give you, all the scoldings that your parents give you, being Indians, like the typical Indian stuff? What were they like?
You know, so I was actually a very rambunctious and rebellious kid, I would say, compared to what I
Okay.
am now. And so I got into trouble a lot, to say the least. But my parents were always so compassionate. You know, they would get angry and they would be disappointed, but they were also so compassionate in the way that they taught me lessons. You know, it was never
Right.
never reprimand. I mean, I would never get, I mean, they never touched me. So my parents were always, they
Mm,
didn't, that wasn't their philosophy. They always
okay.
approached learning or, you know, telling me that something was wrong with a lot of, with kindness. And actually, I think their disappointment mattered more to me than any sort of scolding, because your
Mm-hmm.
parents give you everything. You know, they are the life support structure from when you're a child. And if you do anything to make them sad or disappointed, internally you feel like you've done something wrong. And I think I always had that sense of that internal, I would say, calibrator to know that, okay, I really upset them and I'm never going to do it again. And the fact that they are so kind towards me must
Mm-hmm.
mean something, right? And so I think I've taken those learnings into how I run my business and how I deal with my team. Because at the end of the
Right.
day, we're all human and we all make mistakes, and there's no reason to lash out or reprimand someone to tell them that they shouldn't do it again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And did your mom also teach you, Om Bhur Bhur Swaha, Gayatri Man?
Actually, so my my family runs my maternal side, my nana's side. My nana
Right.
runs a yoga institute in Lonavala.
Right.
And
Okay.
so
Okay.
growing up, I had a lot of exposure to spirituality, and a lot of rituals. And I've actually taken up a keen interest in that myself. So when we
Mm-hmm.
were young, we were taught pranayam, we were taught our mantras. I would sit with my grandfather every morning when he would do puja or havan whenever I was
Right.
in India, of course, visiting
Right.
him. And I actually took up such a strong interest in it much later in my life. I think because of those roots that I can chant classical Sanskrit, actually, Vedic
Oh,
chanting. Yeah, I'm quite proficient. I'm not an expert, but I would say I'm decently proficient in it.
okay. Okay, okay, okay. I see. My goodness. So, after what all you have told me as of now, I see, your family is very closely knit. So, and that you are very, very connected to your family. Like everyone from your maternal to paternal side, and your parents specifically. Um, like it's a very, very strong bond, right?
Yes, absolutely. You know, I think it's ultimately your family and really your parents that are your first educators in life, you know, and
Right.
that's why EduFund has such a personal meaning to me, because
Hmm.
it's, of course, you go to school, you spend most of your life in school, but your first teachers are actually your parents. They're the people that want to, that shape your life in such a fundamental way, and all of the decisions that they take makes such a lasting impression on you as a child, right? And how you want to shape your future. And that's
Right.
why when we thought to create EduFund, you know, the way that we wanted to position it is so that parents can actually make a tangible decision in the rest of their life, in the child's lives, right? So it
Right.
leaves a really strong impression on the child's future in a way. I mean, education is all intertwined. It's not just this university you choose to go to, but it's the
Hmm.
lessons that you learn from your parents when you're young as well.
Okay, okay. So since now that you're an entrepreneur, okay, I'm still trying to find that one seed that for which I can say, it's sown the seeds of entrepreneurship in you. So, whom did you see in your childhood, or from where does it really come that you turn into an entrepreneur? Did you because of your nana, because he was running an ashram, or maybe the American dream? If I talk about, because I've watched lots of Shark Tank, to be very honest, so it kind of imbibed in me. Okay, the American dream
That
of being an
term,
entrepreneur.
yeah.
Right. So, where does this entrepreneurship seeds lie in your life, if I talk about it?
Seeds. Well, I wouldn't say I attribute my entrepreneurship seed to one person. I've had
Hmm.
incredible mentors my entire life, people in my personal circles, including my own father, my nana, some of my past bosses, actually.
Oh.
Entrepreneurship was really a gift for me. It was something that I stumbled upon, again, which I feel very grateful that I did.
Hmm.
But I would say that maybe the seed, so it's not a direct seed, right? It's not like A leads to B and B leads to C. But the one thing that really led to this journey was the innate and sincere desire to actually help people from, experiences through a personal struggle. It was never, I know I'm going to be an entrepreneur and CEO and a co founder of a company that's,
Right.
no, it was, I need to do something that actually leaves an impact that's greater than me. That doesn't, it's not just about me, it's about other
Right.
people. That's what it's always been about. And my experiences in life, through my education, through my work, through my personal life, has all
Right.
culminated, I think, to this one moment where EduFund is now actually a reality.
It indeed is. It indeed is. But the way you're speaking, Ela, I see most of the spirituality coming out. Like whatever you probably would have learned in those 2.5 years at the ashram, right? I somewhere feel that that's what's speaking just out of you, leaving a bigger impact. And I mean, the way, I have never been to an ashram, to be very honest, okay? But the way I've heard people and, observed the change in their mindset, that, they become more open towards the public, and they want to help people outside. So I just feel that's coming out from there, is it?
Yeah, I would say that that was one experience in my life. Of course,
Hmm.
so I grew up having exposure. I went every summer. My mom made a habit that we have to go see Nana Nani. It just happened to be
Right.
that Nana Nani lived in an ashram. And I
Okay.
had a particularly close attachment to my grandfather. Since I was born, I've just adored him more than anything. And
Hmm.
growing up, I knew that there was a time where I just wanted to spend with him and spend some time learning about yoga and all of these
Hmm.
things that the Institute does. And
Right.
it wasn't until later in my life, in my early 20s, after I spent a few years on Wall Street, where I decided, okay, this is great. It's wonderful to have this job working in a pretty elite industry. But
Hmm.
I don't want to be a robot sitting at my desk 12 hours a day making a lot of money. I mean,
Right.
it's just not me. I know that I was always motivated by a higher purpose. And
Hmm.
I find it interesting that some of, the biggest characters in the world actually spend their life or spend part of their lives coming to the East in
Right.
meditation, meeting some sort of guru, meeting some sort of sannyasi, and having this
Uh,
transformational experience, and then going out and doing something really big. And I didn't never had the intention, when I spent 2.5 years with my grandfather studying under his tutelage, that I was going to come out and be an entrepreneur. But I always knew that these learnings would carry me for the rest of my life, because there's something to be said of really self
mm,
studying the self, understanding the mind, understanding behavior, understanding psychology,
right.
which yoga and meditation are, right? And keeping
Right.
those learnings with you in whatever you do. Those are the learnings that you never will forget, ever, no matter what industry you work in. I don't care. And that was
Mm-hmm.
such a great learning for me. It was such a beautiful 2.5 years to travel with him, to work by his side, to lead some of his workshops, to give back to a nonprofit institute that actually is trying to help people, to be a part
Right.
of some sort of research projects.
Mm-hmm. Okay, okay, okay. So now that we can somewhere find that how did you really become an entrepreneur, and how has this journey really started? I would want to know how the shaping of your mindset has taken place. So now that we already know that you were absolutely raised in America. You had those American tastes. You ate a lot of macaroni and cheese, right?
And parathas.
And
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 parathas.
parathas.
And parathas, yes.
Okay, and parathas. So guys, just remember that बीच बीच में देसी मसाले आते रहेंगे, ठीक है?
For sure.
वो कहीं वो कहीं कहीं नहीं जा रहे वो, right? So and a lot of parathas, and all those things were happening. But you also mentioned, Ela, that you would come back during all your summer vacations to India, and there was this one specific year, your class fifth year, where you came to India and studied here in India. So now what I really want to know is that till that point your mindset was like a bit of jumping japanga jampaka jampak, okay, but uh, when you really came to India, what was the shift in your mindset that if I ask you to step back in your life and look at that Ela and then tell me what did you really feel when you were sitting in your class in Lonavala in a convent school, and the differences about being in India and in US, and about the education altogether.
I was so confused. I was just, I wouldn't say I was shell shocked, but it was definitely one of those moments, like a Twilight Zone moment, where
Mm-hmm.
I came in, I was like, I have to wear a uniform. I have to iron my pleated skirt. I have to wear a house tie. I have to put oil in my hair and like have two chotis, and like brush my shoes. I I was so, and I was like, I had to sit in one desk every day next to the same person, and my cursive was terrible. Let me tell you. I
Oh,
mean, Indians have amazing, sorry, I mean, this is a generalization, of course, but from what I have seen, Indians have incredible handwriting, and my cursive was so bad. And I'm sitting there with this ink pen trying to
mm-hmm.
write pretty. I was just confused. And I definitely felt like somewhat of an outsider at that point in time.
Right.
Took me a few months to adjust, but after that, I didn't want to leave. I mean, I made such good friends. People
Uh-huh.
welcomed me. I was okay bringing my tiffin with my chapatis and this and that, and
Uh-huh.
it became a habit. And I think that's one of the beauties, when you're a child, is you're so adaptable and agile.
Right.
You're flexible. And I was lucky enough, actually, not just to India, but I moved a lot within the US. I had a lot of
Mm-hmm.
changes in schools. In fact, I've been pretty nomadic my whole life. And
Oh.
that taught me to be adaptable. It taught me to deal with change in a very positive way, because the only thing that's real is change, right? I mean, that is just one of the inevitabilities of life, that things are just in a
Mm-hmm.
constant flux. And
Right.
since then, I've been just open to things that come into and out of my life, because I've had the opportunity and privilege to move around, and in some cases have extreme changes, that were
Okay.
very different. And I adapt to
Right.
them, because that is life. I mean, that's just the fundamentals of life, and it is the fundamentals of business. Things are going to come at
Mm-hmm.
you at 1,000 kilometers an hour, and you're just going to
Right.
be looking from side to side, wondering, how do I how do I figure this out, or how do I
Mm-hmm.
move my body to not get hit? And I'm very grateful, to have had that 1 year in India, and it made me closer. It made me closer to my roots. for sure. It made me more appreciative of my roots and how people are fundamentally different, and that's just the beauty in life.
Okay, okay, okay. That's quite interesting, I would definitely say. And what happened when you went back after that 1 year? How again did you feel the change in your mindset? What happened in your head?
I missed my friends, and I was speaking so much Hindi that my brain started to forget English. Actually, I was speaking. I had never had to write or read Hindi before, and here I am in fifth
Uh,
standard, knowing you're not going to pass the grade unless you pass your Hindi exam, and I'm just like, okay, well, I've never had to write this language, but here we are. I think I passed that exam with maybe 3 marks somehow. But I was speaking so
okay.
much Hindi that when I came back, my English
Uh,
brain wasn't working. And actually, one of my teachers approached my parents and said, she's having problems with English. Are you sure that, she really grew up in this country? And again, it just goes back to the whole point of agility, right? I mean, a kid just adapts to whatever situation, and it took me a few months
right.
to come back to speed, and then I normalized. So my brain just half turned off for a year, I guess.
Okay, okay. Okay, I get it. I get it. I completely get it. So, Ela, on this note, I would definitely want to ask you because, uh, you have had both the tastes, US and India, and, now also probably since you're nomadic, you keep jumping, here and there again and again. But we Indians, we always want to go to US. It's like our dreamland. Okay. Uh, and we just want to get there, live the life there, experience it, and whatnot. So, what do you feel about it? Since you have been there, if given a choice, which country would you pick, and which country would you stay in for the rest of your life if it has to be one country?
Oh, that's Iceland. I would go to Iceland. It's an amazing country. Well, jokes aside,
Okay.
it's how do you pick a country? And I, again, have been so fortunate to go from country to country, right? Which I know a lot of
Okay.
people don't have the same privilege, but I have been so
Right.
lucky and fortunate to be able to hop country to country. And I would like to be able to do that because I just identify so strongly with both cultures and both countries. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they're both home for me. I have family, I have loved ones, I have attachments to both places. And so like I had mentioned earlier, America is my home and India is my country, and it will always be that way. I'll never be able to choose between one or the other. I am
Right.
happy that I was able to come back here and start something and be even closer to my roots and work with, I think, a population where I can make a substantially larger difference than I could in the
Mm-hmm.
US. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's just the reality of it, right? Growing a product in a business that I think will have a much more tangible impact here. Now, for the
Right.
people that wonder, or I know that the US is a dream destination for a lot of Indian people, especially a lot of young Indians hoping to go to college. And I wish that all
Right.
Indians had the opportunity to study where they do. Unfortunately, I know that's not a reality. And actually, that's why EduFund was created to help
Mhm.
people, children, propel themselves toward a dream and to enable parents to help them to do that. I think, in terms of going to the US to study, for example, I
Right.
loved my education at NYU. I mean, it was the most remarkable 3.5 years of my life. I really respect the US education system and the institutions there. I think the standard of university education is really high, and the way that the curriculums are set out in the US are very thoughtful. I think the life and culture outside of university life, depending on where you go to school, is also really exciting. I mean, those are your vital years, right? That's
Right.
some of the most beautiful times of your life happen at that moment. And
Hmm.
I would encourage it to everyone, if they can certainly afford to do it and if it makes sense to them. Yeah, I really would.
Okay. Okay, I see. Okay, so now Ela, tell me, how many companies did you actually work at?
How many companies did I actually work at? So while I was in college, I started working as a project associate at a
Okay.
NGO. So not necessarily a for-profit company, but a nonprofit that was dealing with stakeholder democracy at the UN and sustainable development. So that was one. I worked
Okay.
at Quest Partners, which was a hedge fund on Wall Street. That's two. I
Okay.
spent some time at a asset management company in Mumbai. That's three. And then
Okay.
I founded Edufund.
Okay, so that's basically three companies that you've changed. Okay, I see. I absolutely see. Okay, so now tell me one more thing, Ela. If I have to ask you this thing, that where is your network the strongest? Which place is it? India or US?
Where is my network the strongest? In terms of my professional life or my friends?
Overall, because your network is all the people you trust and all the people you know. So if you have to give it a number, or maybe if you have to give it a name, which place has the strongest network?
I would say India, actually. I would say I have a much stronger network here. I have a strong
Okay.
network in the US, but I would say I have a stronger network, yes, in India.
And what if I ask you the reason? What would that be?
Oh, I think a lot of different things. I mean, I have made a really sincere attempt to come here, to work here, to get to know people. Of course, my family, I'm only a second
Mhm.
generation American, so my entire family is from India on both sides. And so
Right.
networks and people that my family have been associated with, people that I've met through
Mhm.
my business.
Right. Okay. So all of them are from India.
Yeah, I have a
I
very
see.
strong connection here.
So you have a strong network in India as well. So your roots are like very, very, very strong. All these things are just coming down to one point, that your roots in India are extremely strong. I get it. Now that you have already mentioned your schooling time, your childhood, your the switching time between the countries, and now that you also mentioned how you felt at NYU. So we know all of that, and then now that you've started working and dropped out of uh, Colombia. So when you say that you dropped out of Colombia doing master, so what was the course that you really dropped out of, and what triggered that, and what was the mindset that you decided to drop out of it?
Okay, so I think that warrants a longer story, which, since we have time, I'm happy to get into. So
Yes.
I, and I think this is all related, and so I will take the liberty to say this, but it's very easy to peg me as a rich NRI who's not super associated with her culture or who hasn't spent a lot of time in India. And
Hmm.
I say easy because that's something that people have done most of my life, actually,
Hmm.
when I come to India. And so growing up, with that label is one thing, but the reality of my life has been something completely different. And growing
Okay.
up, I wasn't a rich NRI like a lot of my other peers at NYU. In fact, I struggled with my own education. I had a parent who was sick during some of
Hmm.
my early years right before I went to university. And so I would say I had a very humble upbringing, but we were always cognizant, right, of
Okay.
our expenditures and things that were important. And so
Right.
ultimately, I ended up going to NYU, but not as easy, I would say, as for some other people, because when I got my
Hmm.
admission, I saw a
Mm-hmm.
very large price tag. It was about $200,000 at that time, which was in 2009. And
Right.
I I was ambitious. I was determined, right? I think education should be it should be every child's birthright. It's not, I wish it wasn't a privilege. It is today
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of people, but it shouldn't be,
Yes.
right?
Right.
I think it should be a birthright. And so I didn't want the price tag of an education stopping me. I was determined to go where I wanted to go, and I wanted to go to NYU. It was my
Mm.
first school. I did early decision, which effectively means when you apply early to the school and you get in, you're committed. You have to resign, you have to withdraw all of your other applications. I was adamant. That's where I wanted to go to school. And I said, that's where I'm going to get into school. And
Right.
so I got in, and it
Mm.
was super expensive. And my parents are there looking at the price tag. And
Mm.
I knew it wouldn't be absolutely achievable for them because $200,000 at any time is a lot of money for
Mm.
any parent,
Right.
right? I mean,
Right.
no matter, I think, how rich or poor you are, $200,000 to go to school is expensive, right?
That is expensive. Right.
Yes. And so I, again, being aware of my family's situation and, my family's health, still decided that I was going to go, and I found a way to go. I had a little bit of support from my parents, but
Mm.
not completely. I was lucky
Okay.
enough to get a scholarship, a merit scholarship from NYU, which helped to pay around 40% of my tuition. And then I worked two
Ah.
jobs in college that I worked around 20
Okay.
hours a week to put myself through school. And I still came out of school with a lot of loans. And you're 18 years old normally when you take on this decision that I'm going to sign, my parents will co-sign for my loans, but ultimately the responsibility lies on me. And
Right.
after you're done with college, it's you have to pay it off. And I mean, yes, you're technically an adult at 18, but you're still unaware of the consequences of what it means.
Right.
And so I'm there scratching my head thinking, yes, I will absolutely do it. And
Mm-hmm.
you have that moment of, okay, can I actually pay this off? But yes, what does it mean? Maybe one day I'll have the money, maybe I'll aspire to do it. But always had a
Uh,
very strong conscience,
right.
conscience. And I had this looming cloud of fear over my head that constantly rained down the agony of, okay, you're going to have $60,000 in debt. How do you pay this off? It's a lot of money because once you graduate, you're going to be a human and you're going to have a lot of other expenses. You're going to have to pay for rent. You're going to have to pay for food. You want a social life, but you have to pay off your loans. And so
Right.
I knew that I had to find a way to possibly reduce this as much as I could. So again, I was lucky. My parents helped me out with as much as they could. I got a merit
Yeah.
scholarship, and then I worked 20 hours a week in college while having just a crazy schedule, going to school.
20 hours a week.
Yes. And that too, I was taking care of kids. I was nannying. So you can imagine, I mean, going to school,
My
taking care
God.
of crying babies, interning,
Oh boy.
and managing to sleep. I slept very little. But, I made it through. And to be honest, this is the reality of life for many, many people, not me. I think
Right.
some people have it more difficult. In fact, I had a very close friend in college
Hmm.
who also went to NYU, and he
Right.
could not afford to pay his rent, which was super expensive in New York City. And
Right.
he lived in the library. He lived in our library until campus police came and kicked him out, and then he slept in the park for weeks until he ultimately found a way to work, buy a car, and then sleep in his car. And this is a kid that went to NYU. I mean, NYU is a very prestigious university,
Yes,
and
it is.
but it's also really expensive. And there are a lot of people who find it difficult, to pay off their loans or to actually pay for their education. And he actually did this. I mean, straight out of his mouth, he did this. And so in comparison to him, my story feels like nothing. I'm grateful for what I had, and even though I had to work and there were some hardships, I'm
Right.
grateful, right? Because in comparison to that, I had a room to sleep in. I had some shelter.
Right.
And so I
Right.
went through that entire experience, and it was a huge learning for me, right? I graduated in 3.5 years. Normally, the entire course of US education is 4, just because I wanted to save some money. I had finished all of my requirements, so I was done in 3.5 years. And
Wow.
the next step in my life was, I guess, to start a master's. I thought it was the logical thing to do. I had been working in and around the UN ecosystem and sustainable development policy, and
Mm-hmm.
for about 2 years, doing a lot of really, really cool things in the environmental space. I was able to see the birth of the sustainable development goals actually from a very close angle. And my
Mm-hmm.
next track in life seemed to be that I wanted to go and work for the UN, and they have a bit of a strong requirement. They ask you to get a master's before you
Mm-hmm.
can apply to work there. And so I was all gung ho about this, very excited. Okay, I'll go and get my master's. I got into Columbia's School of International and Public Affairs,
Mm-hmm.
and I started there for about a semester. And again, the price tag of that education was astronomical. I was taking out, and this time I didn't have much assistance in terms of scholarships or merit
Right.
awards. And so most of it was all in loans. And again, I mean, this cloud that was seemed to have been dissipating slightly just amassed itself and came over my head and was raining down. And I was looking at it thinking, oh no, here we go, more over $100,000 in debt. How am I going to pay this off? I freaked out. And I think also I will have to say, maybe again, I don't like to generalize, but I think
Uh-huh.
Indians tend to have this, and I'll call it a virtue because I think it is a virtue. I think Indians tend to have this virtue where they don't like to take out, too much in loans. I think loan and debt culture is still pretty new to India. I don't think it's a part of the financial culture in the same way it is in the United States, right? And in the US,
Yeah.
people take out loans left and right and it's fine, right? Here it's not so common, and I think I was lucky enough to have that virtue, have that influence from my parents, have that influence from my nana, which
Mm-hmm.
was, be careful about how much you take out. And it just never sat with me the right way that I had to take out so much money for my education. And the sad
Mm.
thing is, I mean, the price tag of education is not changing. There's not much we can do about it, right? And
Right.
nonetheless, I would always say to myself, taking out a loan should not be my de facto option. It absolutely should not be. I just don't want to do it. And
Mm.
I just had a moment my first semester at Columbia where I said, I'm playing a wild card. I can't do this. I'm not taking out this much in loans. I,
Right.
maybe it was because I was risk averse, or you could say the opposite. I wasn't. I dropped out of an Ivy League school. And
Mm-hmm.
I said, bye. I just said, I need to go. I need to work. I want some real skills now. If I decide to go back and get my master's, I will. I respect the education system, but not now. I
Mm.
need to pay off my existing debt. I need to work. And that's when I was lucky enough to land a role working on Wall Street. It was my first exposure to the world of finance. I had not studied finance. And so, again, I
Okay.
just stumbled upon it. And I worked for a small company that taught me so much of what I know. Again, so grateful for that experience.
Right.
But that was, sorry, the long answer to your question is that's effectively why I dropped out, and that was my mindset.
My goodness. No, this is not the long answer. This is the answer. This answers so many things, Ela. I mean, I'm having goosebumps right now thinking about this, like legit goosebumps, because everything that you've pointed out just leads to so many stuff. Yes, you're absolutely right. You know, in India, many people are averse of taking loans. They don't want to take up debt on their head because, the you don't know if you'll be able to pay that debt off until unless you are in a very secure job. Plus, that is one other thing in India that, many people just go for a secure job because they know that it's secure. Your life is set. You don't have to, take up more risks or something, all that stuff is there. And this is again a brutal reality that many middle class uh, parents do take up that 100,000, $200,000 loan on, on the children and themselves, and then send their child to US to study. So that's the harsh reality. And I'm so glad that you have outspoken this. uh, just fills me up somewhere that this is the truth. How until unless you are really really rich in India, someone who can afford to give shell out those 1 2 CR for the children's education and still lead a good life, it's very difficult. Honestly, it's very difficult.
Yes,
So your
yes,
story
I
is
agree. And my question
so
is, why do you have to be, I mean, why do you have to be rich, right, to go to school? Why is that a precondition or a necessity? I mean, think of how many brilliant kids there are that come from all varied backgrounds where their parents may have struggled to do such incredible things. It's just, it's unfortunately the reality. And again, like I had mentioned, there's not much we can do to change the price tag, but there is a way,
right.
there is a solution to help
Resilient
parents plan the right way.
and the right way, right. That is definitely there. Okay, so I mean, we are almost touching your entrepreneurial entry point, right? So before we actually hit on the red carpet of the, you know, I would say if I really want to glorify this, like in the red carpet at the Las Vegas Sahara, the Sahara Hotel, waiting for the entrepreneurial journey to begin. We're almost there. So I want to ask you before I ask you to step on that red carpet, uh, what did you really learn? Because you said that at Wall Street was the point where a lot of learnings for you happened, and what all shaped up your mindset, because at this point you have a loan on your head when you're working, so your loan is getting paid off, you are earning some good bucks out there, right? Definitely much more than anyone would make at that point in India. And so what would go through your head? How did your mindset change now?
Well, I worked for a company that was about 8 people when I joined.
Mm,
They were a
okay.
hedge fund managing about $1 billion, and when I came in, I was given the task of running their investor relations department effectively. They
Okay.
had no one else in that area, and so I had a lot of responsibility very young in life.
Right.
And as part of that, I had to learn how to take ownership of my work, and I had to have an extreme amount of accountability to what I was doing. But more
Mm-hmm.
than that, I would say my first boss, who I was working with, was very kind to give me the opportunity. And more than any other thing, I mean, finance aside, of course, I learned a lot of finance. I mean, I had exposure to markets, I understood market psychology, I dealt with really, really big investors. But more than that, he taught me to be sincere and how important it is to have sincerity towards your work and towards other people that you're working with, which is something that
Mm-hmm.
I've held on even today. And that's how I deal with my team, right? I mean, you can be the most brilliant boss, and he was. I mean, I don't think I've met anyone smarter in the finance space than him. I mean, he just was on a completely different level. And
Okay.
having that exposure was, of course, amazing. But there's also a different aspect. There are other virtues in terms of being a boss or a leader outside of just their domain expertise, right? Which,
Right.
again, were some of the seeds that I think were planted in my experience to becoming an entrepreneur. But if we're talking
Right.
about, the finance experience, yeah, I mean, I was working for a small company, so you get to do a lot of different things, right? You get to see how trades happen. You are actually a part of the process. When investors are giving money, you're facilitating, the process as
Right.
well. You're watching markets in real time change every second.
Mm.
You're a part of that chaos that happens in the stratosphere of finance, where people are trading and they're losing money, they're making money.
Right.
It's all it's all very energized. And so I had a very, very true and honest financial experience, which, again, I don't think very many people are fortunate to get at my age. It's very rare to work at a hedge fund as your first actual job. And so I got something that a lot of people didn't, and I still feel very dearly and hold all of those experiences very close to my heart, because they were some of my most initial and critical learnings. And wow, I made so many mistakes. I mean, I made so many mistakes, and my boss was so compassionate and so patient with me. And I think that's really important for any leader in any organization, because that's how ultimately a company becomes successful, is through its people. And I'm fortunate to have made so many mistakes and fallen down. And when you talk about a red carpet experience, when I think of my entry into the red carpet experience, I think of myself falling on my face, because it's like, I think I was reading on LinkedIn the other day, and I forget who wrote this, but
Right.
you as an entrepreneur, you lose every single day. You lose. I mean, you're not winning constantly, you're losing. And you're taking all of those moments of loss and packaging it in a way and growing from it.
Right.
My first
Right.
job was, I mean, it was incredible, but I fell a lot. I mean, I fell a lot, and I'm so grateful for skinning my knees, metaphorically, of course,
Right. Right.
and growing from that, and the patience and the kindness people had towards me, that makes everything.
My goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay, and the post that you're talking about, I was the one who shared the post, and the post was actually written by Gary Vee that,
That's
in
right.
entrepreneurship,
Yes,
you're failing every day.
yes, you're failing and you're losing every day, but
Yes. I remember. I remember. So, on this note, since you were at Wall Street that time, which year was this, Ela, when you were working at Wall Street?
oh, well, thankfully it was post 2008. It was 20 it was 2013, 2013.
Okay.
But it was still the financial markets. And again, I will digress slightly, but not for very long. The world of finance has changed a lot since 2008, I would say. And
2008, right?
so it wasn't definitely as difficult as 2008, but the particular industry, the niche in which I was working, was still a difficult product to sell. And
Right.
so it was my first experience doing anything, sales related. But then, of course, you're selling a product in a time where it's really difficult to sell something. And so that made it even more, I would say, laborious.
Right. Okay, so we can see, what all you picked, and this was your first job, and that you failed a lot and a lot, and you see. You also mentioned that you were not from the finance background. So, what was your program in which you took your graduation in at NYU?
I was in international relations and French, actually. So I was,
French.
yes,
So you're affluent in French. Seriously.
un peu, mais pas beaucoup. Un petit peu.
Oh my goodness, I love French, French is such an amazing language. I just die to learn French. Oh my God, I'm so glad to talk to you, Eela. Probably I'll just, get down sometime and, take some French lessons from you. Oh my goodness.
I'm not as proficient as I was when I was doing my minor and studying in Paris, but I can still
Okay.
understand a little here and there. I was actually thinking of brushing up my French, but I
Uh,
hardly get time to do much outside of work.
I completely understand. Okay, so now that you're done at Wall Street, what made you change your mind, and why did you leave this job?
Why did I leave this job on Wall Street?
Yes.
Because I knew that I wanted to do something more. And not that my job on Wall Street wasn't enough. I mean, it was actually so
Mm-hmm.
much. It was more than enough,
Mm-hmm.
right? It was dynamic and it was completely loaded in terms of the amount that I had to learn. I mean, I loved it, and there was definitely a lot going on. But like I had said, there was always a desire to be with my grandfather, a very sincere desire to sit and study with him, learn more about our culture, learn more about our
Right.
heritage and our background. And
Mm-hmm.
it felt like I could take the risk while I was young.
Right.
So what I decided to do was, and again, it's all about failures and risk, right? Ultimately.
Right.
And
It's
so
all about that.
I had a few moments where I was thinking to myself, what would it mean to just kind of up and leave everything in New York, right? Turn my
Uh-huh.
life around, move halfway across the world, be with my nana on, yoga institute and ashram, and
Right.
kind of disconnected from my friends, leave a career which I know many people aspire to do. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, you never really know how to make the decision until you make it. And I just
Right.
knew that I was young, I could take a risk, and that I could always get back up on my feet no matter what I decided to
Right.
do, but that there was something more to be learned in my life, and that learning wasn't necessarily attached to a job at that point, right? And that there was a higher
Okay.
purpose, and that
Right.
I just again had to go out and fall on my face, fall flat on my face, and learn how to get up. And so
Right.
one fine day, I decided that yes, it was time. It was time to move. I had gained a lot of experience, but that I wanted something more. And I actually took the best blessings of my boss before I moved over, and I had
Mm-hmm.
expressed my fear that, maybe I won't be eligible for a job again, or maybe I won't be able to come back into the world of finance. And he said, you can come back 20 years later and still find a job. It's not a job that you should be worried about finding. And he was so supportive of this journey. And once I took his blessings, I just leapt.
To India.
Yes, I flew. I wish I could leap or, fly myself that far, but no, I took a plane.
I like the way you put in jokes there. But yeah, that's great. Okay. And then when you came to India, did you decide to join the asset management company soon after you came to India, or after some time did after a short break or something?
No, so I spent about 2 years were spending time with my grandfather on
So at the
the
ashram.
ashram. Yeah, I was
Right.
helping out there in some work that they needed. I was
Right.
traveling with him while he was teaching, and I was
Right.
think of it as like a very guru shishya relationship,
Ha ha ha
taking
ha.
care of him, learning. And I did that for about 2 years because I just wanted to be completely immersed, and I wanted to be, again, sincere towards whatever I was doing. And that
My
sincerity
goodness.
required me to just be there, be present.
Ha
A
ha.
lot of different learnings in that along the way. And I did that
Mm-hmm.
for 2 years before I decided that yes, I am ready to put my feet back into the water of work and finance.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what this is going to entail. I don't know if it's going to be like any of my past experiences, but I'm going to try again, right?
Right.
And if I fail, I fail. And if I fly, I fly. And after 2 solid years with my grandfather, I made my entrance back as a business consultant for they're actually a US based asset management company that had a India office. And so
Mm-hmm.
again, I was able to work with both the management on the India and US side, which was a nice marriage of my cross cultural influence. And I did that for about a year and a half, which is how I met my current business partner. And
Oh,
about 6 months after leaving that company, we started EduFund.
oh, and that was in quarantine, right?
We are a quarantine baby, yes.
Just like, yes, you are also a quarantine baby. That's great. Okay, so now that you are working in India after taking the break, first of all, tell me. I mean, you've already told a lot that what all you felt while you were working in ashram. But what I really want to know at this point is, uh, how did you feel in terms of the change in the mindset? Because when you are working at Wall Street begins with that clock. I mean, honestly, that sounds very filmy because I've watched a lot of Wall Street films and whatnot. It's like the clock ticks, oh my god, and everybody's in a rush. The clock stops, everyone stops. Done for the day. So that's how I think of Wall Street when I think of Wall Street. So how was this experience for you from a very, day to day strong, lively hustle to getting into a very spiritual, mindful state of mind and, experiencing spirituality, learning more about self and life? And what was this transition like?
I think I needed it. I think many people,
Okay.
many New York Wall Street people probably need it as well. And so
Okay.
it's just a part of the work culture there, right? I think in New York in
Right.
general, you're just very go, go, go. You're on. And finance is that taken to the next level completely, right? I mean, and I have so much respect for my past colleagues and for the people still in the industry because you have to be
Mm-hmm.
really, really tough to be doing that year after year, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
intense. And so I don't think it's for everyone. And I think that the people who can do it are really admirable, right? I had decided pretty early that that's not what I wanted to continuously be doing. And so when I
Right.
came to India, it was certainly a shift in terms of energy level. There was a lot more time actually, not just to do things, but just a lot more time. But a lot
Right.
more time to not respect, sorry, self reflect and
Right.
introspect. And it was certainly a difference in pace. And it's taught me a lot about how to distill what is absolutely important in the sense that you have to make really calculated decisions as an entrepreneur in terms of what requires that constant go, 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 go energy versus, okay, I can step back from this and pause and not put my energies towards this. And that experience, being on the ashram was really great because it created an internal filter for me, one that I never had at that point in time towards work. I was just so used to being on all the time. And I hear a
Right.
lot of New Yorkers say this until they leave, you don't realize that you can hear silence until you're gone. And so I had that moment, and it was it was an adjustment, but it was the right adjustment after
Hmm.
a lot of extreme energy and chaos.
Okay. So that means quite a lot. You learn to live the silence and use it. Right.
Yes, I think some of the most successful people, an entrepreneur, and even some of the leaders that I have are people that actually. So, my first boss on Wall Street was actually able to do this really well. I mean, you're constantly in a world of chaos when you're in financial markets, right? I mean, things are
Right.
changing literally every second. And I think the most successful people are those who can see through the storm. You know, like they say, the eye of the storm is the calmest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the most successful leaders are the people who can sit in the epicenter and see how they're going to get through this. And so there's something very spiritual about the world of finance if you can tap into it the right way.
Okay. Okay, I get it. And if I ask you about the differences in the work culture that you experienced between India and US, and how it shaped your mind and what it added to your mindset about the Indian mentality, Indian work culture, and everything about here, what would that be?
I think the biggest surprise to me was just work timings. So I was used to being at my desk at 7:30 in the morning, and I would go
Right.
home by 6:30, somewhere around that time. And so they were pretty long days. And when I first started working here, actually, as a business consultant, I was really surprised that people would be walking into the office at 10 o'clock, and I know there's nothing wrong. I mean, it's just a
Ah,
simple difference in culture, right? I mean, that's just how things
right.
are. But I would be sitting at 8 a.m. just twiddling my thumbs like, where is everyone, and I'm someone who goes to bed very early. I'm not someone who can stay up
Ah,
past 10 p.m. and I wake up pretty early. And so for
right.
me, it was like my workday is going to be done at 6 o'clock, guys. I can't work till 8 or 9. I get sleepy. And that was the biggest shock. And it still continued to be a learning, even starting my own business and being an entrepreneur, because just people get their days started a little bit later. And so I've adjusted to that now, and I
Ah,
appreciate it. There's an appreciation for it. But that was the biggest surprise for me.
okay. Okay, I get it. Apart from it, anything else that you would want to add to about the work? I mean about the mindset majorly, if I talk about it.
I think it would be an unfair comparison to talk about
Mm-hmm.
New York versus India and work culture here, just because New York is in itself a different beast altogether, even compared to the rest of the US. It's an
Mm-hmm.
anomaly case. And working in finance in New York is also a very anomaly case. And if people who work in that industry are just they're trained in a different way, and there's a grace to that, and there's also difficulties to that. So I would say it's like comparing apples to pears or oranges or bananas. They
Okay,
don't
okay.
compare.
Don't compare. Right, right. I understand that. Okay. And what made you leave this job?
Working as a business consultant, you mean?
Yes.
Well, so the business itself actually decided to leave its India operations. So it was a pretty
Okay.
amicable parting. They were downsizing, so they've since left India. And so it was just, we're not going to be here anymore, and thanks for your time. And I said, I think this is a really interesting time for me to think about the idea that my now partner and I had been mulling over since I started
Mm-hmm.
working as a business consultant, and that was that.
Okay, okay, I get it. So it means that there wasn't any time as such, which was the moment, if I say so, where you realized, okay, no, this is enough. I need to start something of my own. Let me leave this job and start something of my own. So there wasn't any moment of as such.
No, I think my life has just been a incredible moment, or has had incredible moments of serendipity and just morphing from one thing to another. I've never had like I said, I've been so grateful and so fortunate to just stumble upon a lot of beautiful opportunities, and I've trusted the process. You know, there's only so much that we can control in our lives, and as much as I would have liked to control, this is the moment I'm falling onto the red carpet. It was never
Right.
like that. My work as a business consultant ended, and there were a few months where I was thinking about what am I going to do next. I, in fact, even thought maybe I should go and take a job on Wall Street again. Very sincerely, I
Uh,
was in conversations with a few people, and it again, it just felt very disjoint. I felt like I don't think I'm going to be able to sit at a desk for like 12 to 13 hours doing this and working for
mhm.
someone. And I had all of these different experiences, beautiful experiences. And then my current business partner and I started talking, and one thing led to another, and this just took shape. And then it just took shape in a very serious way. And then my chai addiction started, and I was like, I have to work, like, and this is going to happen, and edufund's going to be a thing, and I have to hire this engineer and that person. And now, I mean, we're 15 people strong. We
Uh,
just launched a product, and hello world, hello edufund.
oh, oh my God. Okay, okay, that's nice. So now it's the entry point. So Ela, um, your story has been really amazing till this point. Okay, and what I'm gonna say now, I need you to tell me if that is the right thing or not. Okay, because this business EduFund has a very deep meaning. It's got a whole lot of experience behind it, and there's so much more than just the name and the business that you're trying to set up. So the way I am seeing it, after connecting your life's dots, starting from your birth in US to looking at your father being sick, then getting to the point in NYU, and still going through the points where you were cognizant about your expenses, and then you got into NYU being the rebellious child that you were, and adamant about the education, the kind of education that you wanted to earn the price tag. You could feel the pain that your parents had to see, and you personally went through all those learnings and pain mixed together. That it's a hefty amount, and averse nature of being Indian, of not taking so much loan, yet dying to have the correct education, and then dropping out of Colombia again because of the price tag. All these reasons combined together with the right mentality that every child has the right to education, a good education, for as a birthright. Hey, they should have it as a birthright, was the core seed, core meaning for founding EduFund as the company, where you're trying to help every parent and child get the right education for their child, and probably send them abroad if they want to, without thinking about the money. Is it?
You said it. You said my life story in, I think, 2 minutes.
Oh my God, I didn't realize that I was speaking for 2 minutes, but I hope this is the thing, because this has a very, very deep impact. Honestly, on me as well, it has a very deep impact. And I mean, I just can't stop thinking about your core, your nature for helping people, the bigger meaning that the business has to educate, and everything out there for this that there is currently comes from the strong meaning that you've faced. So now, Ela, like there's this one thing on this note that I would definitely want to know, that you have faced this at your level. Okay, definitely you have faced this. We all know it by now. And you've also faced the, you know, labeling, where you have been labeled as a rich NRI. But that is one perspective that Indians have. That is a very general perspective, to be very honest. Okay. But I also want to know, what all do you know about, or have you experienced it in India, where you have seen it from the grassroots or the middle class level, like in front of your eyes, where the parents in India have been struggling to pay their children's fee even for a normal school, let alone be a private or a good educational school. Even from a normal school, they are not able to educate. They have the desire, but they are not able to do it. Have you seen this?
Yes. In fact, I've always thought that it's better to. So, do you know who Bruce Lee is? The martial
Yes, I
artist.
know.
Okay. So one of
Right.
my favorite quotes and somewhat of a business mantra is a quote by him actually, and he said, if you spend too much time thinking about anything, you'll never get it done.
Mm,
And that
right.
was actually something that I started realizing while working, very young, is we can make plans to do things. We can hypothesize about what change will look like. We'll talk about what things need to be done. But if you actually don't get out on the ground in the field, nothing will ever be accomplished, right? And that's something I
Right.
have always held very close in my life is I just I don't care about talking too much about what I'll do or what my plans are to do. Let's just do it, right? Let's just actually get it done. And so I
Right.
was very, when I was working within the UN ecosystem in sustainable development, I realized
Right.
very early actually that we talk about poverty eradication, we talk about healthcare for the underprivileged. That's all great and that's all necessary. But for me, the most important tenant or aspect of sustainable development, right? Development for people was education. I thought that the biggest way to make change or impact in anyone's life is education, giving them
Right.
access to an education, enabling them to get an education, because that's how people learn to shape their own minds and their own will and their wisdom, right?
Right.
Done. It's just it's fundamental. And so instead of then again talking about working in policy, I didn't want to work in policy. I didn't want to draft documents for the rest of my life. I actually wanted to work in the field. So when I was in college one summer, I came to
Mm,
India and I said, I want to volunteer actually in organizations that work on vocational training and in education. And I actually want to work with kids and understand, what is their struggle? What is the struggle with low and middle income Indians? I want to see that firsthand and work with them. So I worked for two organizations actually with younger children, so not with children that were preparing to go to school, but with younger kids. And I worked in
right.
Dharavi in Mumbai. So there's a organization called the Acorn Foundation that works
Mm,
with children within who live in Dharavi and educates them. And so I taught English there for some time. And then I also worked for another organization in Lonavala called Sampark, Social Action for Manpower Creation. And I also was teaching there and working on some of their vocational training programs. And while I was there, it just occurred to me like, wow, I'm in college, but is college even a reality for some of these people? I mean, some of them were orphans, in fact. I mean, I was lucky to have parents, yeah, though they struggled. I mean, they still helped to support me a little bit, but some of these kids didn't even have that. And that's again where it really hit home for me that I do want to do something in education. And I wasn't sure if it was going to be working for organizations like these always, but
right.
it just reaffirmed that education is the space that I want to be in some way and somehow. And that's how, I saw that struggle, which I, unfortunately cannot empathize with as much. And it's sad,
Right.
but that is the reality.
Okay, okay, okay. I get it. So I mean, it would just be a repetition of statement from my side to say that everything around your experiences just adds up. And on this note, listeners, I would like to again point this thing out. If you want to be an entrepreneur, and if you're trying to find something to become an entrepreneur, the idea is just around you. You just need to look at the life that you've been living. You will be able to figure it out, and you will get the idea which would give you the kick, right? And something which will just make you kick out of the bed every morning, trying to think that you can make a difference. That's where your journey will begin. So just find out around you. You will find it. Anything you want to add to the Sila?
No, I think that's very apt. I think, look, every entrepreneur has a completely different and respectable journey. And I would say mine is just an accumulation of experiences that were personal for me
Hmm.
that led
Right.
me to this moment where I thought that I could try to help others as well. Growing up this whole rich NRI label, I can't tell you again how many people would,
Hmm.
extended family or friends of family who would call up my parents asking them for a loan for their kids' education. You know, I mean, that
Hmm.
happened time after time. And it happens. I mean, that is the truth. I mean, education, whether it's abroad or now in India, which is getting super expensive,
Right.
it's not easy to afford anymore. And it's sad, but something needs to be done about it.
I guess that's why we have you here now.
Well, I'm
And
trying.
I'm sure. I mean, I'll try my best that, guys, you need to check out EduFund, honestly, because the motive and, the way the things are working at EduFund to help parents, send their children to for the higher education at a very good school, not worry about this is really amazing. I've checked it out and it's really, really amazing. I just can't put it in words. I would want you to check it out, and it's something that, if possible, I'll start using Edufund to buy tomorrow. Tomorrow, छोड़ो मैं आज से use करना शुरू कर दूंगा if it was that easy for me. But yes, it is there. So if you can, do recommend because it's, if I'm not wrong to say, it's based on the SIP system, right?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah. So, it's based on SIP system and long-term planning and everything. So, reducing the last momentary burden for any parent or a child uh, to get into the college. So, do check that out. And probably it just can be another reason where, you know, you don't miss out on your US visa. So, yes, do check that out. Okay. So, Ela, now that you're an entrepreneur, and now let's talk about your entrepreneurial journey. How has your thinking process changed now? How do you think now?
As an entrepreneur versus how I
Yes,
thought a year ago or 5 years
yes.
ago.
A year ago, 5 years ago, everything. Because I know when someone steps into the shoes of an entrepreneur, they're changed top to bottom.
Well, I still drink a lot of chai, chai addict,
Okay,
caffeine addict. I still wake up super early in the morning. Um,
right.
I still like to do my yoga and meditation. So I would say none of that has changed. What has changed? My sense of accountability towards others has become a lot bigger. When you're an
Okay,
entrepreneur, again, I can't speak for entrepreneurs, but I can only speak for myself. Your
right,
biggest asset and actually the biggest product that you will ever build is not an app, not a website, not a tangible product. It is your team. It is your people. It is the people that
right,
wake up every day and are making the same sacrifice that you are making to grow something that they equally believe in. And now we have a team size of about 15 people. I've never had the privilege of running a team that big, but
Mm-hmm.
for me, I feel like these are the people that I owe everything to because they have helped me create something that is so close to my heart. And if someone can do that, because in the world of startups, when you're coming on in an early team, you're not just taking a job. I mean, you're really
Right.
devoting your life to something. And for
Absolutely.
me, I think about how much more I have to give them and be accountable to them than they
Mm-hmm.
probably do to me. I mean, I can't judge, but I would feel, I think, I really strongly feel that way. And so my
That
sense of
is
accountability, it's almost like I have, well, I have a child, which is my product, which is the app. I'm not a mother. I mean, except to the app. And then I have my other
right.
children, which are my colleagues, and they are just incredible. And I have to wake up every morning and be there for them and figure out a way to give them the answers they need and to guide them, even though that this is the first time I've done anything remotely close to being an entrepreneur. And
Uh,
it's so much about knowing how much you have to give to other people to make sure that they are well taken care of, they are working, they feel comfortable, they're not lost fish in the sea, all of that. That I would say is my biggest learning. And in addition to that, it's you can't control and you will not know everything. I mean, you will know 1% of everything you ever need to know in this entire life. I mean, not just with respect to the world, but in this entire life. And I think that's really humbling because if you're
mhm.
constantly hungry to grow and to learn more, then you're only building a product that's going to get bigger and better, right? You
Right.
should be happy
Right.
but never satisfied, as Bruce Lee also said. And so that's
Ah,
been my learning is you can't control and you're not going to know. So just be open.
right, right. On this note, I really want to put out one thing. So I've always had a fight with my parents. They would always come and tell me, Sarthak, पैर उतने ही फैलाओ जितनी चादर है. And I would always tell them that, अगर पैर चादर से बाहर नहीं निकलेंगे तो कभी आप चादर बड़ी भी नहीं करोगे.
Yes.
So,
Yes, absolutely. I agree. Go big or go home.
so
You have one life. Make it beautiful.
yes, 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 yes. So, I so agree to you. Okay, so now that you've been so much into finance and everything, you manage funds, you've had the words directly with investors and whatnot. How did you manage to start this up? Did you take up a loan? Did you have savings or investments, or how did you really start this up?
Yeah, so initially it was bootstrapped. I have a co-founder. We both put
Right.
in some money initially to, upstart the company, and we
Hmm.
decided, see, the thing with fintechs is it's not like any other domain in the startup ecosystem. Fintechs are
Hmm.
pretty cash bleed companies, right? It's very expensive to run a financial technology company, and we knew that very on through our experiences working in finance. And so
Right.
we were again lucky enough to go out and after we had bootstrapped, raise some angel funding, which we
Oh,
have done. And we also secured a small institutional investment from a US company as well. And subsequent to
wow.
that, we've raised some good angel funding. So I feel very grateful that people have had that trust and uh, belief in us and our idea and our vision because it's sad to
Hmm.
say but money does run a lot of things. It's just an inevitable reality of life. There's no way around it, and so you have to be wise as an entrepreneur about what your needs are as a company, how you will sustain yourself, and where to allocate your resources and who to take help from.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so now that you have got funding and everything, you got the funding, the business has been running. If I ask you, are you money minded?
Can you elaborate what you mean about money minded?
I will do that, but afterwards. It's a subjective question. I want to know your mindset there.
For me, I think it's important to have money
Hmm.
because, like I had said,
Right.
it's just the truth of life. You need money to survive. I mean,
Right.
money does run things. But I would say that I have not always worked for money. I mean, that hasn't been the complete motive. And if I have,
Hmm.
it's to be able to find ways to help people, right? So, I mean, one of my deep desires about EduFund, when and if it becomes successful, is I would actually like to be able to give back to kids who don't have opportunities to study or to
Right.
school, right? There should always be a larger purpose. And that's something I've learned from, my Nana is he has been so gracious in the way that he has supported people financially, sometimes when he himself didn't always have the means to do so. And
Hmm.
when you die, you don't take money with you. Your bank account's still going to be chilling there like 50 years later, right? And so money is important, but one must always do good with their money.
Right. So yeah, that was the thing. That was the reason it's subjective because guys, again, see, I didn't put in anything. I just told her that it's a subjective question. She's herself telling that, there needs to be a bigger purpose in life. There needs to be something larger than life. And when you go for something larger than life, you need money. Apparently that's the harsh reality of life. That's the truth of life. That's the way life works. If the world works, you need money for bloody everything.
You do.
So when you want to do good, you need money. You need investors. You need money to, even sustain yourself because you are trying to do something good. So yes, for that you need money, but not running behind money. That running behind money can again be, as I keep on mentioning in all of our podcasts, it's like, you know, I want money. I want to be big. More than you, the other people who you need more money. So yes, there's that bigger purpose which we need to see, that entrepreneurs see, and that you also need to see. So yes, okay. Um. So Ela, let's do a quick rapid fire.
Oh boy, my favorite things in the whole world are rapid fires. I'm usually never prepared for like the question. And I have moments where I'm in the bathroom thinking, if someone hypothetically asked me this question, this is how I would respond to a rapid fire. Like, what is your favorite book? And then when people ask me, I'm just frozen. Or who's your favorite actor? Or, like, who's one person you would like to have dinner with? I never know those
Uh,
questions in a rapid fire, but if I'm just like chilling, I can think
uh,
of them.
okay. Let's do this. Okay. So let's shall we start?
Sure.
Okay. That's great. So whatever I say, you would have to answer it within 1 or 2 words max. Okay. Nothing too long sentences.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh boy.
Keep it short. Rest. Number one, your idea of fun.
Boxing.
Oh my goodness, shit. Number two, most important element in entrepreneurship.
Sincerity and trust.
Okay. Best thing about US.
Parents and sister.
Best thing about India.
Grandparents and chai.
Sorry. Okay. One nostalgic memory of your childhood.
Reading with my dad.
Okay. Coffee or tea during work break.
Oh, chai, of course.
Try. Yeah. Yeah. Best moment in college.
Speaking at the UN.
Oh. Best memory of India.
Starting EduFund.
Okay. And best thing about running a startup.
Everything.
Okay. So the most interesting thing, guy, that I'm gonna pick up is boxing. What did you do in boxing? Who did you box with? Who did you hit?
I've been boxing for the last almost 4 years now, actually.
Oh my goodness, do you still box?
Oh, yes, I adore it. I love boxing.
Oh my God, guys, गलती से पंगा मत लो ना इला से. I mean, भूल के भी मत ले लेना.
Even intentionally.
Oh my God. मतलब पिट के वापस जाओगे.
Yeah, see, again, I'm all about surprises. You think like finance girl, yoga girl, girl who loves mac and cheese, boom,
Oh
boxing.
my prospect, my goodness, dude. This is completely unexpected. Oh my God. Okay, so tell me one of the experiences of your entrepreneurial journey, right? Which is like this surpriseful for you basically, I would say, and that surprise changed you completely, top to bottom.
Surprises about entrepreneurship. You mean the whole thing is not a surprise? You mean every living day of my moment as an entrepreneur is not a surprise because I'm coming across something I had no
Yeah.
idea even existed. I think the biggest
Mhm.
surprise is probably just working in finance in India, which is a really different ecosystem. Just the way that things work, dealing with the regulators, how slow things can be sometimes. I mean, all of that has been a
Mm.
surprise. Maybe the biggest surprise is I didn't think in 2020 I would have interviewed probably over 1,000 people.
Oh my goodness. Why did you interview them? For the
Yes,
jobs or what?
of course.
My goodness.
I
How?
spent, yeah, at least I think I probably interviewed 1,000 people in 2020. I,
Oh my God.
yes.
I mean, I can definitely say Ela had the perfect mind. And for this post, I'm gonna hire this person. He needs to have a checklist of A, B, C, D, E till Z. Okay, Ela, was there something like A, B, A, B, A, C, something like this also in your
I
checklist?
wish. I honestly wish I was that. I mean, I'm pretty type A, but I wish I was that type A because it would have made my process a lot easier. But no, I mean,
Mhm.
I think again, all entrepreneurs should be picky about the talent they hire, and I think
Right.
probably some of the best co-founders are the best HR people. I joke with my partner that after Edufund, when I retire, I'm actually going to go open up an HR consultancy firm because I just have gotten so, systematic about my hiring. But no, I mean, look, the key is you're building a company and you're
Mm.
building a company that depends on people to build it. You have to be picky about your people. You have to be thoughtful about the conversations that you're having with people and the questions they're asking and the responses that you get, right? Because it's not like
Right.
ABABABSD, this, tick, that, like, do my alphabetical alphanumeric combination.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much more, right? It's okay, what are these people made up of? How are their responses? What are they thinking?
Mm-hmm.
How do they
Mm-hmm.
articulate an idea? Do they fit into your team culture well? What is your team culture? And so that takes a lot of time. You have to spend a lot of time talking to people because you really want the right people to be on this ship with you. Because if there's a time where, I don't know, you're down and you can't navigate the ship, someone can come up to the mark and say, "Hey, I got this." And you want to be able to trust those people. And so that was a huge surprise that I would spend so much time interviewing and it would be such a failure 9 times out of 10. Again, a huge failure most of the time.
Right. Okay, I get it. I completely get it. ठीक है. Since we're talking about failures, apart from this, if do you have you had any huge failure in your entrepreneurial journey from 2020 till 2021 as of now, which has, taught you a big lesson? So what was that failure and what was the learning that you got from it? And how did you manage that failure?
So initially, when we were working on the app and the idea earlier in the
Mm-hmm.
year, we wanted to outsource our technology because my partner nor I come from a tech background. We're not techies, we're both finance people. And so
Right.
tech was this, it was like Mars for us, like walking on Mars, unbeknownst territory, what we were going to come across. We had no idea. And so we thought,
Right.
okay, yeah, it's the right thing to do. Let's outsource the tech. Let's,
Mm-hmm.
let's find a vendor who will do it for us and then give it to us.
Mm-hmm.
And we had such a difficult time finding a vendor. I mean, vendors took us for rides, they were misquoting. Obviously, when you don't know something
Mm-hmm.
about anything, it's easy for someone to lead you down the wrong path for monetary reasons, of course.
Right.
And so we had 3 months, I would say, where we were just lost in the dark. We didn't know what to do. And I
Mm-hmm.
kept having these moments where I started to realize that this just doesn't feel right. I mean, this whole idea of outsourcing, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
feel right. There had to be another way. And that's when I started playing with the idea that I think we have to do this in house. I think I have to hire engineers and work
Mm-hmm.
with a tech team and build this product. And I
Mm-hmm.
so strongly, my gut, it was my gut telling me, it was nothing else. It wasn't my intellect. It was just my gut telling me that, hey, intuitively, something's really wrong. You need to re explore your possibilities. And I listened to my gut.
Oh.
And it was probably the best decision we've made for the company is to bring a team in house because you own the product. Then again, there's more accountability. It's yours. The team that you hire cares about what they're doing, right? Because they're contributing towards something that's actually going to be seen by people. And
Right.
that was a huge moment, aha moment for us that hmm, yeah, something doesn't really feel right, and let's reevaluate it. So initially, it was really challenging. And again, when you come from an industry that is completely different, or not completely different, but you're entering an industry that has a slightly altered aspect of what you've been doing,
Mm-hmm.
it's you have to learn and you don't know where to start, and it's like there's 1,000 puzzle pieces on the table and you're thinking, oh my god, how am I going to put this together in a very limited time span. So I would say
Right. Okay, okay. So that's quite an interesting part there. And guys, on this note, all the only thing I can say that yes, even if you are starting up or you are a startup already, think before you outsource. I guess not every time it's necessary to outsource. Sometimes, having the right set of people with you helps you grow personally and as an entrepreneur as well, because it teaches you much more. It teaches you about the work, it teaches you about their, thinking process and tons of different things. Just quoting in a very simple manner, 99% of the engineers or the coders are like engineers, right? And this is a certain way engineers think. Like this, just to say, engineers are like quote unquote point A, point B, point C, point D, right? Not everyone is like that. On the contrary, let's say if you have someone who's a content writer, or let's say someone who's from the mass communication, they would prefer writing paragraphs. So there's a huge lot of differences in the way each and every person presents. You are going to learn everything as an entrepreneur, so that is going to help you out there. So yes, do take the right decision when you think of that. Okay, so what a journey.
what a
I
journey
mean,
indeed.
I mean, what a journey! Yeah. I mean, I'm just falling short of words. I'm also falling short of questions as well, because I don't think so. There's much left that I can think of. I would want to ask you, because you've already told everything so much in detail. But I would definitely want to ask you this one thing. How was this experience of speaking at the UN? Because you've mentioned UN so many times that you've spoken out there. You know, the only thing I can say is that I have done model UNs. Okay, I have never been like the thing for the UN. I've seen people from model UNs going and speaking at UN conventions and all those places. But how was this experience for you actually speaking at the UN?
I think it was one of the scariest experiences of my life. Only
Why?
because I was completely unprepared. So I was there actually for some work, and there were some conferences going on, and
Uh-huh.
I did not know that I would have to represent someone, or and So we're there, and someone turns to me. Actually, I think it was my boss at the time, and he's like, "Oh, XYZ person is there. I need you not there, and I need you to deliver a statement on this and this." And I'm just looking at him completely
Uh,
confused as to, are you talking to me, or is there someone standing over my head that you're speaking to? Because I had never anticipated anything like this in my life, and I was young. Again, I was 19 years old. And he was like,
right.
okay, you need to draft this in this statement. It will be fine. Just go to the room, and
Mm-hmm.
when they say that, your delegation has been called, turn on your microphone and speak what you've written. And I'm like, okay. So I started
Mm-hmm.
drafting my statement, and these conferences had different, I mean, all, delegations from across the country, excuse me, across the world would come and
Right.
on behalf of their nations. And
Uh-huh.
so at different times, there would be different people from different delegations. And so I prepare this statement, I run it by him, and he's like, okay, it looks all good. You can add this here, but in general, yeah, just go and give it. It's fine. I mean, people do this all the time. It's not such a big deal. I mean, and maybe it wasn't for the people that did it all the time, but it was literally my first time, and I was unprepared. And so I walk into the room, and there are 400 people there. And I'm just thinking
Oh my
to
God.
myself, oh, I'm going to stutter or do something crazy. Thankfully, it was none of that. I took my seat. They called on me. I gave the statement. But after that moment, it was one of the biggest moments of elation, of happiness, because I had
Uh,
dreamed so long to do work in the UN when I was younger, and I finally had this moment. It was one that I didn't plan for, but I think the best moments in life are those that you really never prepare for. They're always grand surprises.
oh my goodness. Which committee was this? UNGA or what?
So I was there because the conference on sustainable development was happening effectively, and I had to give the
Okay.
statement on behalf of the major group for children and youth, because there was
Okay.
no one there at that time.
Okay.
And so my boss was like, "Yeah, you should just go give it. It'll be fine. Like, here's the statement, re-edit it a little bit, and you'll be fine." And I'm thinking, oh, okay, I'm sure it will be fine. I'll just fall on my face or stutter or maybe black out from the fear, which, I mean, it was scary in the moment, but then, you overcome it. And again, you learn so much from it that
Right.
at the end of the day, everyone's just a human giving a speech or, writing a statement. And I'm sure everyone was equally as nervous as me.
I'm pretty sure that wasn't the truth there. Everyone was chilled out, only you were nervous, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, no, I'm sure everyone was completely calm, and it was fine. I was just having
Uh,
a panic attack.
no, I'm kidding, I'm kidding, right. Okay, so since everything has happened and you're in the business sector, you have worked in finance, you have done the hiring, you've got the engineers, you've given jobs and everything. Do you have any investment plans for yourself or for the business that you're running, all together working, something in sync? Investment or money management plans? What are your investment and money management plans?
I mean, I definitely think that EduFund is something that I would want to do for my children, right? From my own
Mm-hmm.
personal learnings. Of course, I don't have children at the moment besides EduFund, but looking at the model that we've created and also seeing, so there's a similar model to what we're doing in the US, actually. It
Mm-hmm.
already
Mm-hmm.
exists. So this idea of systematic savings is there in the US, and it's actually quite successful. And I would certainly love to do that, for my kids as well, if I have any,
Okay.
because it'll make a huge difference in their lives.
Right. Apart from that, you don't have any investments going on like, SIPs, mutual funds, real estate, or insurances, anything of that sort?
I actually cannot invest in India, sadly, in mutual funds and
Oh.
SIPs because I don't have an Indian passport, so I don't like to say I'm not Indian, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
have an Indian passport, and sadly, the regulations are super strict around NRIs. So I don't have the
Okay.
freedom to do that here. But yes, I have some investments in the US, which
In US.
I hope will go a long way if the markets continue to be okay, to help secure my future as
Okay.
well, since I put all of my life earnings into EduFund.
Okay, okay. But we consider you Indian. You are fully Indian. You're working for the Indian parents. You're working for the Indian children, and whatever you're doing is for the Indian crowd. So you are dedicatedly, wholeheartedly, from soul to outside, in and out Indian.
For sure. Yes.
Just the hometown stays in US, but you are Indian. That's how we would like to take it. Okay, so with that said, yes, Ela, I don't think so. There's anything left that I extra, want to ask you. I have had my share of learnings from you. And on this note, I would want to say, guys, this was Eela Dubey with us. What a story! Like, first of all, Eela, I would want to tell this to you. You're the first NRI who was on the show. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Okay, that really means a lot to me. A lot. Okay, next thing, guys, get this notion out of your fucking heads, dude. Whatever she's doing and whatever she's been through, I guess it's very, very wrong for any one of us to say, that we and all NRIs are rich, all NRIs have, pocketfuls of full of cash. No, it's not. We are never gonna know the deep insights or what is really happening with the person. Ela, as she mentioned, is one of the stories that we have, and she just quoted another story of the boy there at NYU. People struggle a lot, so just stop viewing people from one single naked eye. There's much more to the story. Try and know the story before you make any judgments. Okay, that's one thing I would say. The next thing that you know, I would want to say that you need to pick up is that if you want to start up, but just pick this thing up from Ela that there's always a spiritual connection, which definitely थोड़ा time बाद समझ में आएगा. Otherwise, in the simple words, work something for the bigger, have a larger purpose in life, you'll be able to do it. Yes, so these are some of the things that I would ask you to pick up from Ela. And Ela, if you have to give your business mantra, what would that be?
Oh, I think I've given so many of them.
Still, to wrap it up, if you want to give one, what would that be?
I would go back to one of the quotes that I made by Bruce Lee, which is, if you spend too much time thinking about anything, you'll never get it done. So work on getting things done. I mean, have a great idea, but execute. Every minute, every moment is so precious. Don't
Hmm.
waste it too much on ideation. Use it
Right.
towards productivity.
Again, a beautiful thing has been said. Okay. So yes, thank you so much for that as well, Ela. And Ela, so there's this one thing that we do at our show before we end this up, that we ask our guests to recommend us another entrepreneur whom you think we should call on the show and talk to them about their journey. So whom would you recommend?
I would recommend our tech advisor. His name is Akshay Surve. He's the CTO at Delta X, which is a bootstrap ad tech startup. And he's had an incredible journey, a very respectable and admirable journey of bootstrapping a company for, I think, about 8 years now and running it very successfully. So he's someone I
Hmm.
think you would enjoy so much speaking to. Very humble and just lovely, knowledgeable person.
Okay, then I would request you to help me connect with him, and I'll make sure that we get him on the show, talk to him, and then you both have each other's link to listen to, and do share it with everyone. With that said, I want to thank you again, once again, Ela, for coming on the show, giving us an insight into your Dhandho Ni Soch. It was such a pleasure talking to you.
You as well, Sarthak. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ela. I'll definitely meet you soon. Bye bye.
Bye.
I hope that you're able to take back something insightful from this podcast and apply it in your life to be a better version of yourself and add to your Dhandho Ni Soch. If you know someone whom you think should feature on my podcast and has a very inspiring entrepreneurial journey, then do drop me a DM on my Instagram, SarthakVarshney. Sarthak Varshney. Yeah, that's me. I'm the founder of SV Clicks, and SV Clicks is the producer of this show. You can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn as well with the same name. If you're willing to listen to more of such unheard, inspiring stories of the entrepreneurs, then don't forget to follow us by pressing that follow button on your podcast screen. Thank you for being such an amazing audience. Keep learning, keep growing. We'll be back soon. See ya.